Welcome to another episode of Listen Loudly. I'm Jocelyn Thompson-Raw, and today my guest, Dr. Chelsea Jackson Roberts, my friend, my colleague. I cried at the end of this, just so you know. We knew this anyway, but I think how we see the world of movement, of yoga, is exactly the same. It is for everybody, but also the importance of us learning and leading from our connection to ourselves, and that being a lifelong pursuit. So it is a short episode, it is a sweet episode, yeah, pen and paper. Just her message is wonderful. Enjoy. Be still, my heart. Dr. Chelsea Jackson Roberts. What are you doing on here?
How are you, Jocelyn? I'm so happy to see you.
I say this at the start of every podcast, and people are going to be sick of me saying this, but I had a dream list of people who I wanted to speak to, and every single person said yes. And I am so grateful for that. And when I slid into your DMs just to ask you, in my heart, I was like, I think Chelsea's going to say yes. But it's just each time I record these, it's such a joyous feeling. So thank you for saying yes. And thank you for coming on here. How are
Absolutely,
you?
Jocelyn? I'm well. I was going to say, I think it speaks to who you are. Like, that's great to just throw out and every single person is a yes. It's the excitement that we have to talk with you. So I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy and excited for you and this podcast, the short times that we've had to spend together because we are sisters across the pond. And so it's like, whenever I'm with you, it feels like just picking up where we left off. It feels like I've known you for decades. And quite honestly, I think clearly we just met when we started here at Peloton when you came.
Yeah.
So I feel great. I feel really inspired to be chatting with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think you're right. There are some people who you meet and it's a conversation doesn't even need to be had. You're just like, yeah.
Dialed in.
Chelsea's
Yeah. You're
Chelsea's
like,
my
oh,
girl.
she's my people. Okay. Yeah.
So Chelsea, we met working together at Peloton. I'm on the tread. I'm on boot camp. You're in yoga and meditation.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to any of Chelsea's yoga and meditation, get into it. Just your voice, the sound of your voice is just incredible.
Well,
So
thank you.
I want to know the start for you because you studied child education before you went into yoga. So tell me a little bit about where you studied that, why you studied that, and we'll go from there.
I got really curious about yoga when I was in college, when I was at the end of college. And I remember wondering what this thing was. It was just to me, not accessible. Like I would see people on covers who didn't look like me doing yoga. I would see people at the gym that would go in, I'm going into step aerobics and I see the yogis and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not one of them. Or I would see the advertisements for the yoga pants. And I was like, I don't fit in there. And so I got really curious and I was hesitant because I didn't think that I belonged there. And it was my own internalized thoughts and also what society has kind of dictated who is worthy of certain spaces, especially spaces for wellness and mindfulness. And so I just remember just being very hesitant. I did not step into my first yoga class. And I love to share this story because I know a lot of people are intimidated by yoga and meditation. And I didn't just go in there charging in and say, I'm here. I remember I graduated from college and it was early 20s, moving through adulthood. I just started teaching elementary school in Atlanta. I graduated from Spelman College, historically Black college for
Woo,
women.
woo. Yes.
Yes. And so
That
it
just
was
makes me
just
feel
like
warm
all of
inside.
and so so I'm in this incubator that is telling me that this world is for me to explore it and to be a leader in it at Spelman, because that's what we normalize being leaders and
Mm,
seeing a president as our leader, president of the college, and just things like that. And so it was funny to go out into the world to leave Spelman and then have to make sense of it. And so I feel like yoga was that tool for me to support me in making sense of the world.
mm,
And so I was a third grade teacher,
mhm,
really stressed out. Shout out to all the teachers out there. Shout out to anyone who is taking care of anyone, like
mm,
caregivers, like any age, all of that. And so I just remember feeling burnt out already in my first year of teaching. And I was like, what if I tried that thing that I was curious about? Because I was curious because everybody who did yoga just seemed like they were either happy or at peace. Even if
mm,
it wasn't happiness, it was just like they were grounded. They were just like here and present. And I admired that. I wanted that.
mm.
And so I just remembered saying, okay, I'm going to try this yoga thing. I went to a hot yoga class for the first class ever as a beginner yogi, fainted in the class.
Chelsea.
Fainted. All I remember was cold towels on my forehead, my back, my neck, and I was just like mortified that I'm looking around. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I totally fainted."
Oh no.
I don't think I had ever fainted before in my life, so it was just like, "Did I?"
Is it? Am I? What?
And uh-huh. And I actually went back. I went back for another round. I don't know what that was about, but hey,
Great.
here I am. Not necessarily doing hot yoga because I actually found out that that wasn't necessarily the best for my body constitution. Shout
Mm-hmm.
out to Ayurveda for teaching me that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it opened up the gate for me exploring and understanding what yoga is. And by definition, yoga just means to unite, to yoke,
Mm,
to join.
mm,
And so, as a first year teacher, as a young woman who just left the space of Spelman, as a Black woman who was up against the world and realizing, oh, it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
right.
I really hooked into yoga because it was the first time that I felt grounded, present, and at ease. And it didn't
Mm,
come like overnight. It wasn't like clearly I fainted in the first one. I remember crying in Shavasana in another class. All
right.
of these things, right, were happening that made me feel uncomfortable. And that's usually the thing that keeps people hesitant to try yoga and
Yes.
meditation because it's like silence. It's like, you're still, you're listening to everything.
Mm,
All of the internal noise is getting louder because you don't have any distractions to take you away. So I just remember my yoga journey being one that wasn't necessarily love at first sight. It was a growing with it. And I understood yoga from a full, only physical understanding. And it wasn't later until I experienced a traumatic, I lost my best friend to gun violence. And it was abrupt, it was sudden, it was the biggest traumatic experience I had ever gone through at the age of, at that time, 23.
oof,
And so my yoga practice began to change a bit. It wasn't just this, I'm going to tone my glutes and my abs. It was, I need this to get to each day. I need this to remind myself that I have this breath right now. Life is
mm,
hard, it's challenging. I've never experienced anything like this before, but what I do have is this breath as my anchor. And that's what
mm.
yoga has taught me. And that's why I've never looked back since.
Wow. 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 Um, and so interesting that you said that those first experiences that you fainted, that would make so many people run,
Mhm.
like sprint
Run.
in the opposite
Yeah.
direction, be like, absolutely, that is a hard no, like absolutely not. But you
Yeah.
kept on coming back to it. And then of
I did.
course,
And I used Yeah, I used it as information. I used it as data. I used it as, okay, hot yoga may not be for me, but let me go and try this yoga that they call restorative yoga. Let me go and try
Mm,
this yoga that they call yin yoga. Or
mm,
let's just keep it old school. And hatha yoga is really what all of these forms of yoga live under. And it was just
mm,
like, well, maybe it's not that form of yoga. And so that's what I want people to understand too with yoga and meditation. It's not one size fits all,
yeah,
it's not one teacher fits all.
yeah.
It's just like anything else in your life. Relationships, it's a relationship. So
Mm,
perhaps that's not your vibe. Maybe hot
mm,
yoga is not your vibe. Maybe you need to figure out another path to go. And so that's what I used it as, because I'm not the person who tends to go back to the thing that inflicts pain
mm.
or, like, makes me feel like I am not doing it good
Yes.
enough. Like, I never wanted to feel defeated. I never wanna feel defeated after my yoga practice.
Yeah.
I wanna feel renewed.
Yeah.
And so hot yoga wasn't necessarily giving me that. And
Mm,
the other yoga practices and ones that I'm actually developing now on our platform,
mm,
engaging music a lot more. I
mm.
just want to meet people where they are, and I want them
Yes.
to know that they are already whole and that
Mm.
this is just going to add to and illuminate us even more.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I need to just swim through all of that. The first piece that you said about it being just information, that is, I
Mhm.
say that so often that when even if like I'm stretching at the end of a class, I'm taking the stretch with members. I'm like, let's just see, does one side feel like it needs a little bit more love than the other? Because I'm also mindful of the language that I
Mhm.
use around the body rather than one side is weaker or one side is this or one side is that. Like, let's just kind of reframe the language that we use around our own bodies, but also that it's not anything more than it needs to be. So it is just
Mhm.
information. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I could do it actually, stretching my right hip a bit more or mobilizing my right hip a bit more. Cool. I know that now. That's information from me about myself. Great.
Right.
Not, oh, I can't believe I'm not as flexible or as flowy as whoever else. It's always this,
Right.
coming back to yourself, information about yourself for yourself that you can go,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, this is for me, or it's not for me. And there's no pressure around that. There's no like you have
Mhm.
to do this. And also your idea around so many people chase this feeling exhausted after a
Mhm.
session. And I actually got a message from a lady just the other day. She asked me, and she'd listened to a 2-for-1 I'd done with Susie, and she said, is a hike a recover? Would you consider a hike a recovery? I like to push myself as hard as I can every day. And I
Mm.
said, in that case, no, like a hike isn't a recovery for you. First of all, because you're not able to push yourself as hard as you can every day. If you're doing that, your body's not recovered enough to be able to do that. So
Mm-mm.
you're operating at maximum of what those sessions could be. And also our idea of what hard is, maybe pushing yourself hard is slowing yourself down, because that
Mhm.
pause, that slow down, that, okay, you know what? I'm not going 90 miles an hour. I'm going slower. And
Right.
that feels a bit more uncomfortable. That, in fact, is my hard. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people really, really, find that hard work, that kind of slowing down, and it
Mhm.
is okay to do it. And we're never really comparing ourselves to sort of like elite level, like world class athletes who are competing for their countries, but they do the same thing. They have to recover in
Right.
order to be able
Right.
to perform at a high level. And so I said to her, so no, I don't think a hike is a recovery, and a hike isn't a recovery anyway, not if you're at like
Mhm.
12% powering up it or
Right.
whatever. But actually, and I just encouraged her to be curious about maybe why she wanted to push herself so hard
Mhm.
every day, and what that might
Yeah.
look like in a different way, and could she give herself grace in doing that. I think it's hard for a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Absolutely. I just think about a cell phone. I think that of the universal thing that so many people have in their daily lives. And I think about, I don't want my cell phone to get all the way down to the red, like, and it's like, you have 5% left. I'm in a panic now, especially if I'm out in the world. I have a son now, like my husband. Like, I don't ever want to get to the point where I'm like, am I about to just like completely be out of
Mm,
juice? So
mm,
I don't tend to approach my workouts in that way. And so I think that yoga is a good companion or component to support us in that, because you're still moving your body, you're
mm,
still breathing, you're still, I think stretching is one of the most beneficial, things that we can do for our body, especially as we age.
mm,
And so for me, I think that it would behoove a lot of us, especially athletes, if we found that balance, as my teacher, Swami Jayadevi, says, that balance between effort and ease, because it's
mm,
somewhere in the middle to me where I tap into that joy. Like, everything is not going to be easy, everything is not going to be hard. But when I see that balance between that effort and the ease, that's the space where I feel the most human. That's the
mm,
space where I give myself space to breathe, to relax, to rest, and say that
mm,
I'm worthy of that rest, that I don't have
mm,
to keep doing, that I can actually be in some of those spaces. And
mm.
for me, yoga is the practice of being.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
yeah, finding that middle point, because I guess the misconception of effort being here and ease being here. And I feel like so many people find that actually that center point, that, perfect point for you, they feel like
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't know who they are or where they would be in that space, when in actual fact it's the very thing that kind of
Mm-hmm.
brings them, together with themselves. But yeah, the practice of yoga allows to ease into that and break
Yeah.
down those layers, and it's a lifelong journey, right? I think
Yeah,
that
yoga was designed for us to understand who we truly are. In
yeah.
yoga, we call it our kleshas. It's peeling back the layers. Each time we get onto our mat,
Mm,
practice breath work, we're
mm,
actually peeling back the layers that we have accumulated and
mm,
absorbed throughout this life. And it's
mm,
not always the messages that we truly believe, it's what someone's placing onto us. And so
yeah.
for me, when I step onto my mat, I am taking away those layers so that I can uncover truly who Chelsea is. What do I
Mm,
actually like? Do I really want to, like, to
mm,
me, that's where it gets scary, because you're saying, well, who am I if I'm not this person who I've been telling myself? And this is what's working for me. This is what
yeah.
makes money for me. This is what, like all the things, because you accumulate so much. And the more that you accumulate, it's so hard for you to say, you know what, I'm going to just step back and take a
Yeah.
retreat. And so I
Yeah.
think that that's why people oftentimes, I notice, will compartmentalize yoga a lot. It's not even like this workout that people can normalize. People can say, I go for a jog every day. But it's something about yoga and meditation. I think it's our relationship with our worthiness of slowing down, being quiet and present to
Mm,
ourselves,
mm,
that tells us that we don't have enough time, we don't have enough space to do it. And so people will tend to compartmentalize yoga and meditation and say, I'm going on vacation and I'll do yoga and meditation. Or I'm going on a retreat to a beautiful place that is I can only go to once a year. I'll do yoga and meditation then.
mm,
What if you said, let me try to take some deep breaths first thing in the morning before I get the day started? Guess what? You meditated. And
yeah.
then you add on. And then you
Mm,
say, how can I integrate this into my daily life and let myself know that I'm worthy of these moments
mm,
of presence for myself, as
mm,
opposed to saying, nope, not yet, not yet. I gotta wait
mm,
until I worked, and then I can
mm,
have my yoga practice. And then I can
mm,
luxuriate. Like,
mm.
no,
Yeah.
you gotta, let's do it now. What are we waiting for? This is the only life, the only body that we get to occupy, as I know of right
Yeah.
now in this lifetime. So why wouldn't I use these resources that will allow me to tap into what I truly want and desire
Mm,
during this lifetime?
mm. And it is, that worthiness of it now
Mm-hmm.
piece is huge, because I guess we've been,
Yeah.
programmed to believe that we are only deserving of rest when we work
Mm-hmm.
really hard.
Right. Right.
but we also believe that
That's
that
not
hard work is
facts.
never ending. So it's when and
Right.
as you say, you're waiting for that holiday. It's also easier to meditate when life isn't lifing around you when
Yeah.
you're away. But how
Right.
powerful to be able to do it, as you say, when you wake up in the morning. And it doesn't, I would
Mm-hmm.
be very guilty of being like, right, let me set out this time, instead of, as you say, there are no parameters here.
Yeah. As you wait for this file to upload, close your
Yeah,
eyes, breathe.
yeah.
Know that it takes, what, 5 minutes or so for that to. Guess what? I got a built in meditation right now. Close my eyes, let that happen, you know? So
Mm,
I just want people, I usually meet yoga students, not all, but a lot at crisis. Like it's either a crisis, a doctor has told them you should really look at, bring your stress levels down, like look at your nervous system. Like, and I love that. I'm here. Come through, whoever has been ordered to integrate yoga and meditation into your life. And I also want you to know that you don't have to wait until you're in crisis to
mm,
begin your practice, to begin yoga and meditation. And also, the thing that was uncomfortable for me was like the music. It was like really slow, really silent. Also, find your vibe. Like I just
mm,
did a TikTok live, Jocelyn, yesterday
mm,
with Timbaland and our colleague Camila. And Timbaland and he just released new meditation music and he was playing it. And I just started leading a guided meditation. He started beatboxing. I'm getting chills talking about it because it was just like, there was something that told me that all of me wasn't welcomed to the mat and that I had to change something, that I had to wear a certain costume to be a yogi, that I had to listen to certain music. Or I could have Timbaland bust out a beat and say, you know what? This is what we have right now. Let's breathe to this beat. Now we're meditating and I'm meeting you
oof,
exactly where you are.
mm.
So that all of that to say, get curious. Get curious and you don't have to keep doing it if you're not feeling it, but something tells me that there's going to be an aha moment where it's just like, "Oh, this is
Mm.
why yoga is thousands and thousands of years old."
Yes, this shit isn't new. It's been
It ain't
working
new.
for years.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you found your flow within that,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah, from people
incredible.
telling me that it didn't belong too. I remember the first time that started teaching yoga, and a woman asked me, "Can you not play?" I was playing like R&B or something in the class, and she was just like, "I don't think that belongs here." And I took that. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I've offended the yoga community. It doesn't belong here." Okay, make that a mantra. It doesn't belong here. I don't belong here. This music doesn't belong here. My
Mm,
culture doesn't belong here, like all these things. So what is it that belongs?
yeah.
So that's why I want to rewrite, reimagine, rethink about, redefine who yoga is for, what yoga can truly have the capacity and potential to do. And for
Mm,
me, I think that it has the potential to unite communities that
mm,
would have never have connected before. And I feel
mm.
like this is the practice that unites us in so many ways.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, if you don't feel like you belong in that space, or as it just even you backtracking to what that first message was and then how it was eventually imprinted on your brain,
Mhm.
and you just think how that happens again and again and again and again. I
Yeah.
remember I went to a yoga class in London. The teacher was very keen to show us what he could do. I was like, I
Oh
love this
yeah.
for you, babes, but I can't even get into pigeon right now. Like these hips are not hipsing. Like so, it was, and everyone there. Again, I was there, and I was like, ooh, I'm not sure I'm going to come back here again. It just wasn't the
Yeah.
vibe, wasn't the space.
It
But
becomes acrobats. Yeah.
yeah, and that's to me.
Yeah.
If
And
I'm
I'm like,
acrobating, I'm breaking my neck right now because.
yeah. And it's just like, what is this going to do for me in the long run? Don't get me wrong. I love a circus soleil. I like Circus del Soleil. Am I saying that wrong? I'm trying to think of all the things where, people are showing how beautiful and magical our bodies can be.
Yeah.
But on an everyday basis, that's not sustainable for me.
Yeah.
That's why I keep my classes pretty pedestrian. I keep
Yeah.
some people could look at my classes and say, oh, she's basic. Honey, it takes a lot of skill to be able to break this
Yes.
down for someone who says I don't belong,
Yes.
And so I try to meet people in the spaces where they feel the power of their body, they feel the strength of their body. And I think a lot of times when we rely on trying to show off or showboat, or there's a time and place for everything, but when it comes to moments like that, I think that we're just trying to compensate for whatever it is that, as an introvert, I can understand even socially if I'm just like, ooh, I don't know what to say right now. Let
Yeah.
me show that I can do a handstand.
Look at me.
So there is a balance. I think that it is a lifelong journey. Yoga is never like, I don't ever want to be a master, because then that's samadhi, that's nirvana, that's my work here is done and I'm about to check out. So for as long as I'm on this earth, I am a yogi. For as long as I'm on this earth, I am constantly learning every single day. And the day that I say that I've learned it all is my last day, and I ain't ready for that yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even those yoga teachers who can do all the things with their bodies, I hope that they still have space to know that there's learning in how to reach students, especially those who don't think that they belong.
And you're deep in that lifelong practice, which I think in itself takes a level of self-acceptance to say, I'm going to give to myself for the rest of my life, and I am worthy of doing that, and I love myself enough to do that. Also, you saying about that the basics are not basic. Listen, I feel so much the same about that in the movement that I teach, whether it's strength, whether it's running or on the tread. Like when I was mentoring other coaches in the industry, I had a mentorship for women in the fitness industry, and we went over the basics real good, because what often happens in the fitness industry is everyone feels like they don't know enough. So they do course after course after course after course after course without applying even the knowledge that they learned when they first qualified. And in my mind, I'm like, listen, if you went out on the gym floor and you coached people for 1 or 2 years with the knowledge that you have, you're going to know where the holes are in your knowledge. You're going to know exactly what course you need to do. And you will have built the strongest foundation ever over the person who's like, I need this course and this course and this course and this course and this course.
Right.
To often impress other coaches, not the end user, to impress other coaches with, well, I have all of this knowledge. And then it just becomes this kind of massaging of egos. And I'm like, okay, so what's happening for the end user here? How are they benefiting? Because I love that you're elite now and fabulous, but first of all, nobody can afford you. Second of all, what is happening to the person who feels like they have no idea where to start? You can start with you do the basics with everybody, and doing the basics and understanding the basics will serve you so well. And I think that you're saying exactly that in yoga too. There is nothing simple or there is nothing basic about really, really leaning into that.
Right.
The title of this podcast is called Listen Loudly, because I feel that you have to listen loudly to yourself in order to be heard by others. Is there a moment you feel in your life where you listened loudly to yourself in order to be heard by others?
Listen loudly to myself. Yeah. To be heard by others. I think right now is that moment. I think that I am in a place where, I've been teaching yoga since 2007. I've been practicing since 2001. And when I think about how I've just tried to be this ambassador for yoga and this message. And so I remember the first time I came back from Spelman, and I was vegan. I was vegan for 12 years. And I remember trying to push it on everybody. I was like, everybody, you need barbecue tofu for this instead. We need to do vegan mac and cheese. Like, everybody was like, oh gosh, here comes Chelsea. Here she comes again. She's about to try to convert us to being, all these things. And so I just remember just trying to speak loudly about yoga and meditation. And I've learned over decades that it's do your work and people will see what is happening. And I finally feel like it's starting to happen. Like I finally feel like I'm listening to myself loudly in my yoga practice through motherhood for the first time, um, through all of these things, navigating New York City. I'm not a New Yorker. Now my son is a New Yorker. Wow. But it's just like all the things. And so the more that I listen to myself loudly and the things that I teach, I have to practice what I teach. That comes from my teacher, Tracy Stanley. And that's what I'm listening to loudly right now. Listening to when I get frustrated that I think that people should get it about yoga. And I'm like, why are people not like, what is it? And I'm like, listen to yourself loudly. So talking to you right now, Jocelyn, is reminding myself, Chelsea, remember when you first started? Remember how intimidating it was? I'm listening to myself loudly. And I think that that is what translates to folks right now in present day who are where I was in 2001 of saying, do I belong? And now I know I belong. And I'm kicking open doors of people who say that we don't. And by we, I mean the collective we, not even to race, but like, you know, seeing men in spaces, seeing people with a spectrum of abilities, both physical, intellectual, like all of these things. I'm kicking doors open for anyone who says that there are folks who don't belong in this space, because yoga is for everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm listening to loudly. Everything that brought me to the mat, I got to listen to myself loudly in that. And now I think that people are starting to hear that.
Oh, and it is music to our ears. Thank you so much.
I love you, Jocelyn. I am so like, as you know, I'm a fan. You are my go-to for the tread. I love everything you do, all of your music, your techniques. And so I just want to say I am in awe of you. You are a beacon of light for myself, as a mom, as a woman of color, as, you know, all the things. We can go down all the lists, right? And I just want you to know that I see you. So thank you for having me.
You're making me cry. Thank you. Honestly, so much. You are just it. Let me gather myself.
Jocelyn.
Thank you. What a joy to listen to you. And the tears actually flowed down the face. Here we go. Dab, 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 dab. Oh.
Let it flow. Let it flow.
Well, thank you so much, my love. And I will see you and squeeze you very soon. Lots of love.
Absolutely.